Lukoil has halted operations at a giant oil field in Iraq, citing force majeure. According to Reuters, due to sanctions imposed on the company, Iraq has suspended all oil-related monetary payments to Lukoil. And last week, the company sent a letter to Iraq's Ministry of Oil stating that force majeure circumstances had arisen, making it impossible to continue normal operations at the field. And if the reasons for the force majeure are not resolved, the company will halt production and completely withdraw from the project. According to the agency, this field is one of the largest in the world and is Lukoil's most valuable foreign asset. In Russia, every 8th company in the urban passenger transportation sector has closed down. And the main reason is a shortage of personnel. Absolutely all regions of the Federation are facing this problem. For example, in 2024, the demand for bus drivers in St. Petersburg increased by 40%. That's according to calculations by headhunter analysts. Putin has no intention of bringing Russians back from the war against Ukraine, so the Kremlin has come up with a solution to attract labor migrants from India. Nikita Skoblikov will tell you more about this.
Starting from January 2026, VAT in Russia will increase to 22%. The tax hike is due to a budget deficit amid rising military spending and declining export revenues. However, it is unlikely that this measure will be able to fix the situation. Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service has calculated that actual VAT revenues to the Treasury will be $6.1 billion less than what the Russian Ministry of Finance forecasts. In addition, this will lead to a number of problems in the country's economy.
A decrease in domestic demand is expected, which will reduce revenues from excise taxes and duties. Higher prices will reduce company profits. The wage fund and tax payments from personal income will also decrease. A reduction in dividends for private and state shareholders will lead to losses for certain companies, and regions will lose a significant portion of their revenues. The increase in VAT will intensify inflationary pressure and force the Central Bank of Russia to maintain high interest rates for at least 2 more quarters. This will increase the cost of government borrowing. From a publication on the website of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
The main flow of funds from the Kremlin is directed to the military-industrial complex, but even it has already started to falter. After 3 years of growth, industries related to the military-industrial complex are now showing stagnation or a decline in production, writes the Moscow Times, citing data from Rosstat.
We can see that the very model of the Russian Federation, using the maximum amount of resources to develop the military-industrial complex, which is supposed to pull the economy along with it, so to speak, is also slowing down. And now, even for directly financing the military-industrial complex, Russia doesn't have enough money, there aren't enough resources, and the Russian military-industrial complex itself, so to speak, is also starting to stall.
The failure of import substitution is making the situation worse. The manufacturer of integrated circuits, Baikal Electronics, was unable to establish production of the domestic Baikal EM processors. According to the company's CEO, the reason is a shortage of components on the market, which is the result of Western sanctions.
Together with our partners in the European Union, we are already preparing the 20th package of sanctions. We expect to prepare the contents of this package within a month, and we propose to include in the 20th EU sanctions package Russian legal entities and individuals who are still profiting from energy resources. There will also be an update regarding those who have abducted Ukrainian children. There must truly be global pressure against this. And of course, there should be significantly more pressure on all the schemes that allow Russian military production to continue operating.
If the military-industrial complex isn't growing, there's nothing to say about civilian industries at all. Over the past 3 years, 875 companies and individual entrepreneurs in the field of urban and intercity transportation have ceased operations in Russia, according to the Moscow Times. The main reason is a severe shortage of specialists. Back in the spring, the State Duma stated that 37,000 driver positions remain unfilled. However, according to Oleg Torosh, the head of the relevant organization, the real number could be as high as 500,000 people.
The Russian economy has truly reached a certain critical point, and so to speak, the approach of a flock of black swans is, in my view, only a matter of time, and not a long time at that. And the main problem, as I see it in the Russian Federation, is that today, at this very moment, it is essentially facing a double crisis, one that is both significant and challenging.
The Kremlin does not disclose the true scale of its own losses in the war against Ukraine, but the situation with the labor shortage is indeed critical. That is why the government has decided to replace Russians with migrants. As the Economic Times reports, Moscow plans to sign an agreement with India on labor mobility in order to address the staffing issue. Currently, Indians in Russia are mainly hired for construction and the textile industry. But the labor shortage in mechanical engineering and electronics seems likely to soon open up new opportunities for migrants. Nikita Skoblikov for Freedom TV channel.
In Russia, things are burning and exploding almost every day. The occupying army is suffering from supply and logistics problems after successful operations by Ukrainian special services deep inside the aggressor country. What is striking is not only the number of strikes, but also the geography of the targets and their scale. So, how many energy facilities and oil refineries have the defense forces struck over the past week? And most importantly, what kind of damage have they inflicted on Russia's economy and military complex? My colleagues have prepared an informational briefing.
On the evening of October 27th, a powerful explosion occurred at the Sakhalin Greece 2 power plant. This is not just an ordinary facility, but one of the key power stations in the Far East. The moment of the explosion was captured by a car dash cam. Immediately, the region began experiencing disruptions in industry, transportation, and public utilities, and in several districts, water disappeared. After all, the 120-megawatt power plant supplies electricity to a third of the region. By the way, the distance from Sakhalin Island to the nearest points of Ukraine's eastern border is approximately 8,000 kilometers. The following day, October 29th, turned out to be extremely productive for the Ukrainian military. On that day alone, the defense forces struck 3 strategic targets in 3 different regions of Russia. Among the targets hit was the Novospassky oil refinery in the Ulyanovsk region. According to media reports, after encountering Ukrainian long-range strike capabilities, the facility ceased operations. As a result, the Russians lost the ability to process 600,000 tons of crude oil per year. That's 750 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. On the same day, a strike also hit the Mari oil refinery in the Republic of Mari El. This plant is one of the key fuel producers for Russia's central regions. According to various sources, it was capable of processing more than 1.5 million tons of crude oil per year. To hit it, the drones had to fly approximately 1,000 kilometers. The third major target on October 29th was the gas processing plant in Budyonovsk, located in the Stavropol Krai. The facility belongs to the company Lukoil and plays an important role in gas processing and chemical production. At the end of last month, the Russian energy system once again came under attack from Ukrainian long-range weaponry. The Navy reported that on that day, a Neptune missile struck the thermal power plant in the city of Orel. The facility supplies power to industry and provides electricity to the population. Among other things, the thermal power plant supplied regional enterprises of Russia's military-industrial complex. Its capacity was 330 megawatts. And to hit it, you need to cover approximately 160 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Besides the thermal power plant, the main explosive event of the day was the attack on one of the largest oil refineries in the city of Yaroslavl, which specializes in fuel production. The annual processing capacity is about 15 million tons of crude oil per year. However, there is currently no information in open sources about how much the impact on the plant has affected production. A short pause and then more striking events. On the night of November 5th, explosions occurred simultaneously in 2 Russian regions, Vladimir and Oryol oblasts. In Oryol, the strike once again targeted the thermal power plant, while in Vladimir region, it hit one of the largest oil refineries in southern Russia, Lukoil Volgograd Nefte Pererabotka. This enterprise is a giant, capable of processing, according to various sources, up to 16 million tons of oil per year, which is considerable. It accounts for 9.5% of all oil refining in the Russian Federation and is a key fuel supplier for the southern region,